we have as a reuse and conditionality feature publishing profiles. All right, publishing profile is another type of object. It is set up by our designer, and it is an object that contains rules for publishing content. The publishing profile is the thing that you select when you go to publish a book. This list here, this is the list of publishing profiles that this book is allowed to publish to. So this profile not only controls what format the book is published to, but you can also define some rules for how you would like that book to be published. And let's go ahead and take a look at those rules now. All right, publishing profiles are a type of object that enforce standards. So because of that, we have placed them in the standards directory inside of this library. So we've got standards, publishing profiles, and here are all of the publishing profiles that are available inside of this library. By default, they are named after the output format that they create. All right, so for example, the HTML help publishing profile, when you publish to it, it creates an HTML help file. Word document, obviously, publishing format is set to Word. But you can then go even further than defining what the publishing format is and define some rules for how to publish that document. First of all, you can choose which books are allowed to publish to that publishing profile. So for example, if you didn't want just any book to be able to be published to Word or PDF or HTML or so on, you can actually specify which book or book template is not allowed or is allowed to publish to that output format. All right. Now, if it's a publishing format that every single book is allowed to publish to, then you could select applies to all books, and then it doesn't really matter what you enter here. Every single book you create is allowed to publish to that format. Another thing you can control is what release date that book must be in order for it to publish. Release dates is something we're going to talk about in the next module. It's basically what status a book is in. Is it in draft? Is it in review? Is it in a released state? Well, you can choose whether or not you want that book to be in a particular one of these states in order for it to publish. So, for example, all of the objects in my book must be in the release state in order for me to even see this publishing profile and publish that book to Word. So you can be very restrictive on when an author is allowed to publish a book to a particular publishing format. This may be helpful for you if you're publishing to, say, PDF, where generally people will publish to PDF when the book has been finalized. You know, it's the final publication version of the document that gets shared with all of your users. So you don't want anyone to be able to publish to PDF unless all of the content has been released. So you can set up these release dates here to enforce that fact. All right. Some other things you can do are swap out objects for other objects. All right. Down here at the bottom of the screen, you can say, I want to swap out this object for a different object. And a good example of that, excuse me, is, let's say you're OEMing your product and the copyright notice and disclaimer are different from the OEM version and another version that you're working on. So what you can actually do is create a rule. Let's search on copyright. Let's say that this first copyright notice, this is the original copyright notice that is in all of your user guides. So I'll select that, double click on it, and it's added here. Now when I want to publish, I want to replace it with the OEM version. So I would select its replacement in the list here by double-clicking. And then what happens is this copyright object is swapped out for this one at the time of publication. Right? And you can create multiple rules like this. Maybe I want to now replace the disclaimer one for the other. I can do that as well. Maybe when I publish the book, I want the table of contents to appear one way in one publication but different in another. I can create a rule that swaps out tables of contents as well. So it's really unlimited in terms of what you can do here, what you can swap out. It's just what you want your end result to be. Alright, so this allows you to swap out objects. This field up here allows you to swap out templates. Now remember that in our book object, our books are the objects that point to our external templates. Our external templates contain our styles and formatting. They enforce our branding scheme. Alright, but let's say for our OEM product, we need a different branding scheme. So in other words, we need a different Word template. So what we can do is enter in a different Word template in this field here. If I had one. There we go. So what will happen is the book's Word template will be ignored. The publishing profile's book template will take precedence, and I'm basically reformatting or rebranding my content just by swapping out the Word template that gets used when I publish that book. Alright. So the theme tab is all about swapping. You can swap a book template. You can swap out different objects for other objects as well. The next tab is to exclude objects entirely. So instead of replacing them with something, we're just totally removing them from the book in general. And there's different ways that you can exclude. You can just select specific topic objects that you want to be excluded, or you can exclude content by certain pieces of information about that object. For example, what release date it's in. Maybe you want to create a special OEM release date and exclude objects by that state here. Or you can exclude objects by the folder that they live in. Or you can exclude objects by their variable assignment. Let's say you want to exclude all objects where the product variable equals to X5000. So any object that matches that criteria will be completely removed from your book at the time of publication. Alright? And you can stack these rules. You can have multiple rules if you'd like to. Alright. And down here you can choose whether the objects can match any of the rules or whether they have to match every single rule that you have listed there. Now last but not least, you have some options on some actions that can be performed on the file that gets created when you publish. You can set up actions that happen before the file gets created or after the file gets created. Alright, so for example, we've got some actions for copying files where you can copy files either from the publishing folder to another location or into your publishing folder if you'd like to. You have actions that will move the file. Let's say your team standard is to publish to your hard drive because maybe you found it's faster to publish to your hard drive than over the network. And then you have a publishing profile action that moves everything in your publishing folder from the publishing folder to a network location so that everyone on the team now has access to it, or the opposite of that, where you are moving files into your publishing folder. You have the option to delete files. Maybe you want to do a copy action and then follow that by a delete action, for example. You have the option to zip files up. So let's say, for example, you want to first do a zip action, and then you want to do a move action, or a zip action, then a copy, then a delete. For example, you can just stack these up on top of one another and place them in a particular order. The order that you place them in must be logical, of course, but you can certainly do it. Maybe you want to zip your files and then upload them to an FTP server. You can also run a command line script. You can also do an XSL transformation. Maybe you are using XSLFO files, for example, to create your PDF files. You could set that action up here. You can upload files to your web server if you'd like to. You can run a certain Word macro on your printed document. You can have your book be published to XML if you want. And you can change the file location where the file gets opened after it's been published. So you can basically stack these actions one on top of the other before or after. Let's say here, let's zip the files. Zip everything in my output folder to a new file, and let's go ahead, I'll just select any folder's fine. Okay, file name is going to be output.zip. And then after I zip the files, then maybe I want to move them. I want to move everything in my publishing folder from the publishing folder to another location. All right. Now you may notice, let me show you this one here. Publish to. Notice how this list is very short here. The only options are employment contract and XML. That's because the majority of these publishing profiles have been set up so that objects that are based on this template would not be able to be published to that publishing profile. All right, so if you start to create some books in your library and you go to publish that book and you don't see your output format in the list here, or you don't see any output formats in the list, it's because of the publishing profile. All right, you need to go to your publishing profiles and make some changes. All right, so let's say that we did want employment agreement to publish to Word, for example. We'd want to go to our publishing profiles, open up that profile, and you'll want to check out this area here. This is usually the culprit, okay? So what we'd want to do is either add that particular book or that book template to our list. All right, so there's employment contract. We'll go ahead now and add that to the list. All right, now let's go back up to Human Resources, Employment Agreement, and now this time I'm going to see Word document in the list here. So as you start to create books or book templates in your library and you don't see any publishing options, it's because of the publishing profile.